Hello everyone, welcome to TexasHold'emQuestions.com. Bringing you a new lecture today. This is a lecture based on beating good players. Obviously in any coaching you want to normally target the weaker players. You want to be playing pots with inexperienced weak players. That's where you're going to make most of your money. However, if you're playing mid stakes, high stakes, even low stakes, there will be a sprinkling of good winning players around. So hopefully this lecture will help you beat them in the long run. So let's see. So first things first, there are certain assumptions we can make about a good player. And when I say good player, I mean an experienced player, someone who wins. They're usually going to have pretty common traits. Now, a good player can be tight, loose. That's the thing about a good player. They can adjust. There's different, but there are common traits amongst good players, and we're going to use them as a basis for how to counter them in this lecture. So the assumptions that we can make about good players: one, they're experienced. You will get occasionally someone who's very good at something, but it's like any hobby, interest, sport, game. Typically, to get good at something, you have to have experience in it. Now, you've seen players who've just come to the table as the first time they've played, and they will kind of win on the first night. That's the luck element, but typically you're going to have to gain some experience to be very good, to be a winning player. 20 years ago online, everyone was terrible, so that wasn't so much true necessarily at the start, because it was just if you were less bad than them, you could win. But certainly today, a good player will be an experienced player. Secondly, they understand the math, they understand pot odds well. A good player understands when they're getting a good price and when they're not. They know the odds like the back of their hand. They know what chance they've got. They know if they're dominated, what percentage of chance they've got. They understand pot odds well. Thirdly, they can hand read well. I toyed whether this was a universal truth amongst good players, but I think it's fairly reasonable to assume that a good winning player usually can hand read very well. Thus, I would say 90%, 95% of good winning players know how to hand read. I know Negreanu's often hand reading on TV on the shows a lot of time, but the truth is good winning players do that all the time. It's not particularly difficult when you've got that's unfair to say. It is difficult, but it's the experience that allows you to hand read well. They have that cognitive skill that they know they can put people on hand ranges pretty well. So a good player usually knows how to hand read very well. Fourthly, they want to play in position. We're going to keep banging on about this in our lectures and in our training videos. Position is so important in No Limit Hold'em, and indeed in many forms of poker. A good player will want to play in position. You can win by playing out of position. Gus Hansen, when he first came on the scene, saw being out of position as an advantage because it gave him the ability to bet first, but I think even he realised after a while that isn't the most profitable way of playing. So a good player wants to play in position all the time. They look for opportunities to play hands. You'll see in the training videos I play, you want to play in position. You much prefer calling raise against a weak player and being in position than being out of position and raising into a good player when you've got a medium, a stronger hand than you call it necessarily, because you just have that advantage of being last to act on every street, and again, as I said before, the informational advantage that you have is just supreme. So they want to play in position. Fifthly, they do have the ability to bluff. I probably should say they have the ability to make good bluffs. A weak player will bluff, will try and bluff all the time, but a good player knows those opportune moments to bluff better. They probably have a lower bluff percentage actually than in terms of the big bluff than a weaker player. A weak player will sometimes just be betting for the sake of it, not necessarily knowing what they're doing. Whereas a good player knows when they're bluffing. They know how to even turn a hand which you think has showdown value. They'll turn that into bluff. Sometimes you can watch TV shows and you'll see why didn't they just check it back? Well, they knew that hand wasn't good, and they rightly assumed that this was an opportunity to make the bluff. So they have the ability to make good bluffs. Sixthly, they have the ability to make good folds. So this is just the flip side of the bluff. They can make a good fold. A bad player or weak player won't fold a pair of tens pre-flop or a pair of jacks. A good player could fold a pair of queens or ace king suited without hesitation if they can assess that the time's right, that they should not be making that call all in. They know how to fold a good hand on the river. They can fold bottom 2 pair. You know, they make folds that weak players can't. And seventhly, I mean, you could make a really exhaustive list here about other assumption poker play, but we're keeping it to 7. And 7, they can adapt to you. They have poker tracking software. They have heads-up display, so they can adapt. If they see that, if they've got a sample size which suggests that you're playing a certain way, they will adapt. A good player will do that. I don't think this is necessarily 90% or 95 quite as well as the hand reading well, because I think some good players are just playing their game, but they will, a good player, certainly in live play as well, if they've got experience with it, they can adapt to you, and that's something that you should certainly be aspiring to do. So we're going to, let's go. So we've got 7 points here. What I'm going to do is we're going to go through each point and try and find a way that we can counter their strengths. Everyone in poker can be exploited. There's no perfect player. There's no perfect game either, really. I don't think I would hesitate to find anyone that's ever said they played a perfect game. I don't believe that's true. So all you can do is play as well as you can. And when you are involved with playing with good players, you have to use their strengths against them where you can. That's not always going to be clearly visible, or you won't always see it, but hopefully with these tips you'll be able to look for them moving forward and win pots and play better as a result. So firstly, okay, so they're experienced. So what does that mean? That means they've seen a lot of things. They know the standard lines in hand. So the best way to counter experienced poker players is throwing curveballs. They know the standard lines in hand, so you have to play unorthodox sometimes to make them make mistakes. Good players, they don't even like you leading out into them. If you've raised, they want to just continuation bet and take it down. So sometimes, don't feel bad about throwing an unorthodox move in there. Throw in a check raise when they know that that's a strong line. A check call, check raise, like I said before. Do things that you don't necessarily always do. That if you're throwing them off the game, that means you're making them make mistakes, or they're probably not likely to tilt. That's another thing I should have said. They're not likely to tilt, but make them make mistakes. As experienced, they're often playing several tables at once as well. So sometimes they're playing too many. And one way of countering this is play less than them and devote more attention. If they're an experienced good player, they're quite often they ain't going to be single table. They're going to be playing a lot. So you can counter a good player in the long run by you finding your optimum amount of tables. As I said, this doesn't necessarily mean single table necessarily, but just find the optimum amount for you. Make sure that if your attention level is better than that of an experienced player, you're going to have an advantage over them. So play unorthodox, throw curveballs in them, and take advantage of the fact that sometimes these good strong players are not given the attention that a table deserves. I think that's a common leak amongst strong players. They probably play too many tables because they think that they can get away with that. I'm not a big advocate of that. I think it's better to play your A- game or your B+ game and play less tables than play like a C or a D game on many, because you might lose the opportunity that you had on one of those tables to really make a deep run or win a lot of money in the cash table. They understand pot odds. Okay, so they understand the math. How can we counter that? Enforce errors on their draws by giving them a bad price. If you know that they won't call a turn bet, you have to give them a bad price on that turn. If you put in too small a price on the turn for them and they're flushing or straight drawing, if that's the hand range you put them on, you're making them play well. That's the reality of it. If you give them 4 or 5 to 1 on the turn, I know these little small bets are quite common these days. They're not good bets necessarily. Don't be fooled into thinking that they are. Poker is a large amount of it is a math game, and they know if you're giving them a bad price and then they've got the implied odds, and then you call in on the river when you've got 3 of a kind and you think you've got unlucky. No, you haven't. You've allowed them to play well and you've played poorly yourself. So enforce an error by putting a larger bet on that turn. If it's 70% of the pot, 80%, do it, because sometimes you have to make the mistake. They're going to call, and if you know what, if they fold, they fold. At least you've made them try to enforce the error. That's what you can do. So and conversely, give them what appears to be the right price to call when they're weak-handed you want to call. So if you know you got to the river and you put them on a pretty weak to medium strength hand and you've got a super strong hand, normally enforce an error necessarily means make a huge bet because you want a lot of money out of it. That's not necessarily the way of a good player. A good player will, they'll see right through that and they can fold. So you're going to have to give them a good price to call. You just have to assess, is this player a good player or not? A weak player will be more inclined to call a big because they can't fold, but a good player will, so give them a good price. Thirdly, factor the pot odds into their hand range, so you know if they can, if it's a flop bet and it's a small one and it's multi-way and you give them an amazing price, don't get rid of bottom pair out of their range. You know, you have to factor in the pot odds into their hand range. So yeah, if we make a huge price on the turn, then you can pretty much safely assume they're not going to have a bottom pair if it's been called heads up by another person. So yeah, just factor in the pot odds into their hand range when you're playing through a hand. And this, a lot of it will be intuitive as you get through the streets when you're playing. So they can hand read well. What does that mean? It means don't try bluff when your hand is polarized, that's for sure. If you've got to the river all turn and your hand is pretty much face up sometimes, don't be trying to do a bluff when it's clear that your hand is likely to be weak. But you know, on the other hand, you can turn weak hands to medium hands into bluffs on the river when a draw hits, and you played it like a draw. If you've called their flop and you got a bit stubborn on turn, you called them a turn, and then the draws hit on the river and they've checked to you. Putting this together with the pot odds, you know, you can make a decent sized bet on that river and turn your weak hand into a bluff because you've played it like a draw. So go for it. If you know that you probably don't have the showdown value that you think you have, and your hand hasn't improved, go for it. They will, you know, they can hand read well. They'll give more often than not. They're going to give you the credit for that. So yeah. And conversely, don't expect, you know, this is just a common one that I see all the time. Don't expect to check, you know, if it's check back in position multi-way on the flop, and then represent much on a brick turn, because what, you know, I see this all the time. The board comes, you know, 8-7-2 or something. Everyone's checked you in position, and you've took a free card or something with your 9-10 trying to hit a draw, and then a 8 comes on the turn, it's paired up and it's checked round to you. You can't really represent much. You're not. Everyone knows you're going to have bet an 8 on the flop. You probably would have bet 7. So you know, don't expect to represent very much when you've checked back multi-way and then you bet when they've all checked you on the turn. Sometimes it will work well, but a good player can pick up on that, and they'll either call you like an ace high or a bottom pair or something, or they'll re-raise you. So just be very careful with that. So yeah, we've established they want to play in position. So how can we counter that? Well, that means, you know, if they're immediately to left or they're on the button, you're in the cutoff or the hijack, you know, just tighten your range a little bit when they're lefty. You know that they're going to want to play pots with you. You know that they can hand read well. They know pot odds. So do you want to really be playing out of position with them all the time? No, pick a better moment for you to enter the pot. Tighten your range a little bit, you know. Just be a bit more aware of a position and understand that they're going to be calling or re-raising you a bit lighter. And conversely, if they're opening, it's a really good opportunity. And you saw it in one of the training videos I put recently with re-raising in position. Re-raise them, you know, go for it. Good players will, quite often, if they think that, you know, they think that they're the best player at the table a lot of times, they will loosen their opening range because they think they get away with it. The way you counter that is re-raise them in position. They will fold a lot of the time, and when they call, you can pretty much put them on a narrow hand range anyway, because good players won't call re-raises out of position very lightly. So yeah, make them play out of position as much as possible, or give them a bad price to play in position. They have the ability to bluff, so yeah, don't worry about, you know, making a big call sometimes. Sometimes you just have to hold on. If they really don't mind barreling off certain times when it's clear you've got, you know, top pair, weak kick, or a second pair, they aren't afraid to barrel off. So sometimes you just got to say, you know, is this the time I'm going to make a stand? It'll be intuitive, you know. You realise, you'll say to yourself on the flop, right, if I call this flop and turn bet as well, I'm going to have to be prepared to hold on the river. Sometimes I'll do it, you know, the ace or the overcard will hit, and you're just going to have to hold on because, you know, if you know that they're raising light in position, you've defended from the big blind there, and you've hit a pair, and the story doesn't make sense, don't be afraid to look silly because they will put you to the test. They have the ability to make big folds. So yeah, we know that they can make big bluffs, but they can make big folds as well. If the hand plays down that, you know, that they've got not a particularly strong hand, or you know that they wouldn't have got to the river in that position and played it the way they would with a strong hand, go with your intuition, because if you think they can lay it down, sometimes they can't. You know, they are prepared to make those big folds. And you know, if it's sometimes you could put a good player on a pair of jacks, or, you know, ace queen suits on pre-flop, and just go with it. If you think like, okay, I've raised under the gun, they'll re-raise me. I've seen, they know that I've raised light from here. Go with it. You know, they have the ability to make those big folds. But you know, this is one that you really do have to be careful with and pick the right people and the right moment. But yeah, don't be afraid to pull that trigger if your hand appears monstrous. So yeah, they can adapt to you. So Adaptability is obviously really important in poker. It's one of the really key things to, if you want to be a long-term good winning player, you need to be able to adapt. The good players are always adapting. You know, a year ago you thought someone was tight, now they're loose. Half an hour ago you thought they were playing a certain way, now they're playing different. And they will adjust constantly if they're playing on their A game. So how do you adjust to that? You have to readjust this. It's almost like a philosophy lesson here, but if you've been re-raising them a lot and you've been doing things we've been saying, re-raising them in position and making them play out position, they will adapt. If the statistics are backed up with it, they will notice that you've been re-raising them, and that means they're going to eventually take a stand. They're going to start adapting to you. It won't be instant. It will take a little while probably, but then what does that mean? It means you'll have to adjust your 3-bet and 4-bet range. It also means you're going to have to be prepared to stack off. Like, I've played tournaments before where, you know, you've been targeting a player, like, because you know that they open like 8% of the hands in the cutoff, and you keep re-raising them. All of a sudden, your hand range for stacking off against them has to go down, because they will start playing back. And what's more alarming, or good in a way for you, is they keep folding, and then the time that you decide, you know what, I've got ace jacket, I think this is strong enough, they still fold. But I will say, try and get that last bet in. If you can get that last bet in, it has a lot more weight than having to call. But sometimes, you know, they'll just go with their king queen or their little pair of threes, or even 9-10 offsuit or something. I've seen it before. They'll just decide, you know what, if they can get the last bet in, or if they can do it, they're going to go with it. So yeah, be prepared to play bigger pots with a good player. Sometimes that's the way it's going to have to go. If you're going to want to beat these in the long run, and you know that the situation's there, it's been built up to that. You know, you've been re-raising them for hours. Sometimes you have to make that adapt. But you have to know which players. You know, certain players will keep making that and they won't adapt. So again, this isn't necessarily universal truth, but mostly good players will adapt to you. So the conclusions from this lecture, well, we've gone through quite a few. I've swiftly gone through them. We've kept them to 20 minutes lecture, which is good. Everyone can be exploited in poker. Whilst we try to advocate playing pots with the weaker players more than the better, you will need to adjust and play to good players and find ways to beat them too. You know, if you want to be a long-term, decent winning player and move up the stakes and win lots of money, you know, you will have to play good players and you'll have to learn to beat them. But they do have multiple areas of the game that can be countered. And whilst every good player is different, there are a lot of common traits amongst these good players that you can take advantage of. So some of the things we've gone through, obviously, is sometimes, you know, play unorthodox against them. Make them cool when you want that cool. You know, give them the price so you can make them pay off wizards, because, you know, a good player will keep calling you on the river if you've given them the right price. They'll suck it up, but they will call. Make them play out of position. You know, get them off their game. They don't want to play out of position, but you can force them to do that. You know, they're not perfect. They will make mistakes, so make them play out of position. Make them make the big folds as well. You know, you've got to be careful about when you do it, but you know they can make a big fold. So pick your moments and be prepared to hold on as well, because eventually they will get frustrated. And if you're there with your ace 10 and they've been re-raising all day and it's a big blind war, you know, you wouldn't hesitate to fold an ace 10 to an all in against, you know, it's a weak type, a passive player. But you know, a good player will recognise that you've been re-raising them all day, so you've got to be prepared to hold on. So. Yeah, there's a lot to cover through this lecture. I hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, just keep these considerations in mind next time you play against good winning players. And yeah, to sum up, a little plug for our website as usual. We want to help you make money at poker. We've got lots of services going on. We still have, you know, we've got our the first point of call if you're interested in one-to-one coaching, obviously, is to have that initial Skype call. It's usually an hour. That usually costs $80. However, from this video, if you get in touch with us and quote beating good players, we'll give you $30 off. So, you know, we can't be fairer than that. That's $50 for initial call. What's involved in that call? We ask a lot of questions. We find out as much about you as we can, because, you know, we want to advise you what type of coaching is right for you, if any. What kind of level of you know, investment and how much time you've got is important. Where you're at in your game, what you hope to achieve. These are all things that found out in that initial Skype call. And if coaching is right for you, we'll usually create a bespoke coaching plan that's specific for you to help your progression in poker. The most important thing to think with coaching is, you know, yes, it costs, but it's an investment in yourself. That's the way I always like to say it. It's an investment in yourself. Think of yourself as a business. You're investing in your long-term profitability. How much is one-to-one coaching? It's usually $70 an hour, which is very competitive if you look around. However, if you are willing to invest, you know, do a good investment and buy, like 8 hours with us or more, we usually discount that for $60 if bulk bought and paid in advance. So what are our other services? Poker training videos is now heavily discounted. It's $49.99. I don't know how long that offer is going to last. We'll certainly run it to the rest of 2019. We're going to review our pricing after that, but you'll notice our pricing used to work out as about £215 or $21.99 a month. You'll notice everything here is in dollars other than the training videos. The training videos are more catered for European poker players, simply because it's online training videos, and we're very aware of the legalization of online poker in America at the moment. So yeah, $49.99, you get 12 months access to all unlimited videos. Yeah, they're brilliant. Hand history reviews, yeah, these are $80 an hour. Again, we will give you a discount if you bulk buy, but yeah, they're usually $80 an hour, and all you have to do is download from the poker site that you play, and you can either pick the hands or you go through a whole tournament session. I wouldn't advise that. I think you should cherry pick the hands that you think, but also throw random ones in there as well. And that's a great service for improving the way you want to play. And finally, coaching by email services. So this is really for those of you that you want to coach but you can't afford the hourly rates for now. So the way we do that is $160 a month. That's less than that's less than 3 hours of what a 1 hour hourly rate coaching is. And you get a dedicated one-to-one coach. You can contact them via email all the time. Everything's done by email. It just gives us the flexibility to do it in writing as opposed to on Skype. It is $120 if you bulk buy. But yeah, you can buy that for just 1 month or 2 months. $160. Great service. I advise that really for those of you that play really low stakes but you want a lot of attention still. We do give you that via email. So yeah, I hope you've found this lecture useful. But yeah, good luck for the future, and certainly keep these considerations in mind when you're playing good players.